the way it happened by working with family first and then transitioning really kind of gave me a confidence that I don't think I would have found as quickly if I, went the other way around. I always felt like there were no dumb questions.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
Lindsay, I'm having a fantastic Monday. I will tell you, I am crushing through some things, and we are super excited. We got to see 2 alligators. It was pretty neat. I actually got to capture a picture of one of them. So that's pretty cool, right?
In the lagoon out back you did?
Yeah.
Oh
I saw
God.
them coming, and I went downstairs, had my camera right by the window, and there ended up being 2. Like as they were going, another one floated to the top, and I got to see 2 side by side.
Did you get a picture with your professional camera?
I did.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah,
wow,
people think like you're in the
morning.
South and you see these all the time, and you don't actually. So it was a pretty cool day.
Yeah, well, and alligators, they live, mostly underwater, I would gather.
Right.
So it's crazy when you see them out your bedroom window too.
I know, it's crazy. So anyway, I'm having a good day. I hope you're having a good day too.
Good. Yeah, I am. There are not few people that I would say that I've genuinely become friends with in the industry, but today I'm super pumped because I have one of my handful of insurance friends who's my age and understands similar things to what I experience in the industry that we get to chat with. So Molly, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm very excited to talk to you both. I'm a huge podcast fan, so I am excited to get the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, we, Molly, you and I often text back and forth about all of our favorite podcasts. And I drove to my parents this weekend and had a chance. I wasn't with my husband, which is crazy to say. I wasn't with my husband driving in the car. And so I was listening to a bunch of podcasts. I listened to the Call Her Daddy episode with who's the lady from Sex and the City? Sarah Jessica Parker. And that was really good. Mm-hmm. And then I also listened to a bunch of Crime Junkie. So I am a big Crime Junkie fan. That's my go-to podcast. And there were some crazy cases that I had to catch up on that they've covered recently. So I'm going to have to send some of those to you after we record to tune into.
Yes, please. Podcasts are they're such a great way to pass time. I love my insurance podcast, but also the crime podcast, and murder podcast, and all of the different podcasts. It's the perfect way to spend an afternoon while I'm cleaning or going on a run.
Yeah, I have a really good friend of mine that she had an unfortunate health scare, and I was reaching out to her just to see how she was feeling. It's one of my friends that I've met in the industry, and she was restricted on any screen time. So she said, "You don't know it, but you've been keeping me unbelievably occupied during this period of time. I've caught up on all of your podcasts, and I feel like you and your daughter have been talking to me for 2 weeks straight, which is kind of cool." And I'm like, "Oh, how cool is that?" That she put me on the list of things to keep her occupied, which is awesome. So anyway, I agree. I love podcasts, and I also love you feel like you know people once you're listening to a podcast. It's the craziest thing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, to kick off this one, Molly, I would love for you to share a little bit about your journey in the industry. Obviously, I know your journey and your background, but give our listeners a little bit of context as to where you started and where you're at now.
Absolutely. So I grew up knowing about the industry because I had family involved, but I didn't have the intention to get into insurance right away. I was going to school to get a degree in kind of a health-related field and thought I might work in the healthcare field, but that dream kind of slowly started going away when I learned more about the realities of how much schooling would really be required for the careers I was interested in. I was able to graduate early by taking some extra classes during the pandemic and had no job lined up after that. So I ended up working for my family's insurance agency, just kind of as an admin assistant at first while I was interviewing for other jobs, and just started to enjoy the work more and more. I really enjoyed talking to the clients and learning about something we all need. So after about 3 months, I decided I wasn't going to keep looking for work or do other things, got licensed, and things kind of grew from there. And actually this year I took a big step and joined the carrier side and moved from the agency side over to the carrier side. And so now that's been a big transition and a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about what that was like. I mean, now I work for a family company as well, but I started working for non-family companies. I can only imagine what it was like going from, working for your dad and your uncle, I believe it was, to, not having a family dynamic at work with your boss and your coworkers. That, like, for me coming in, it was weird. I'm sure for you going out, it was weird.
It was definitely an interesting transition. I feel very lucky that they were incredibly supportive. Throughout this whole journey, when I started talking to them about potentially taking the jump elsewhere, I think, they were sad to see me go, but they were also really excited for me. I've attended so many events with them, and I think they could really see how I would light up when I was working, on a bigger scale, talking to different agents, talking to different vendors and carrier partners. That was starting to light me up a little bit more than working with customers one-on-one. And so they were really excited for me. But it is different going from working in an office of 9 people to now, my own team that I'm on has about 25 people. And of course there's thousands of people at the company. It's been a big transition, but I really enjoy it so far. I think the way it happened by working with family first and then transitioning really kind of gave me a confidence that I don't think I would have found as quickly if I, went the other way around. I always felt like there were no dumb questions. I felt like I could ask anything. I could give ideas. And I think in a bigger environment, people often feel scared to speak up.
Yeah.
I know that people want that. I know that our leaders want that, but it's still scary. And I think now, since I first had that environment where I was encouraged to speak up, where I was encouraged to ask questions, coming to this environment, I feel a lot more comfortable with my voice. I've gained that confidence by, on the agency side, being in rooms, where I had the opportunity to work at that point with executives at insurance companies, with really high producing agents. And that, has transitioned into the carrier side where I am asking questions that I don't think I would have asked if I went into this role straight out of college, or if I went into this role without having that freedom first.
Yeah. It's so interesting because a lot of times in the industry, people will go to work for a carrier first before joining the family agency, right? Like that's the normal. When you talk to someone who's normally our age or above, they're like, yeah, my dad sent me to work at Grange, or, my family sent me to work at here, whatever carrier. And they did a couple years, then now they're running the family agency. You really did it the opposite way. So it's interesting to hear that feedback of joining the family agency. I found my voice, because I also feel like when I joined the family company, right, I'm not really one to like shy away. If I have a thought or a question, like I'm going to ask it, but I can totally see that it is sometimes a little bit scary to be like, wait, maybe is that the right thing to do? I luckily have always had bosses who, it was encouraged and even, really wanted for me to be like, wait, hang on a second, that doesn't make any sense. But it is much safer feeling to do it at a
I was going to
family
say, you sure you
agency
always had
company.
bosses that wanted that? Are you confident that you always had? I'm just kidding.
I definitely did.
I meant now. I'm not
Yeah, do
talking
you
about
have
the
that
other
today?
ones. Just kidding.
Yeah. She's like, I want you to stop calling me on Sunday morning and telling me that we need to rework our entire website.
Well, that's the biggest difference, honestly, not talking about work as much during the
Right.
holidays or on the Sunday mornings. That's probably been one of the biggest differences. But I'm still in insurance. So
Yeah. I was going to say, you aren't completely out of
still,
it, I'm sure, right? So,
it
Molly,
still
I have
comes
a
up.
question because I'm not your age. I'm not yours and Lindsay's age. And I love that you're super passionate about this industry. You are absolutely connected. You seem very, very, bought into why insurance is a great place. And I guess for me, what would you tell other people your age or people that might be entering the workforce right now? What would you tell them about this industry that they might not know?
I don't think people my age are aware of all of the opportunities, particularly in P&C insurance, property and casualty. Every day it comes up during meetings with agents, events that I'm at. There's a huge talent gap, and people are looking for the next generation of insurance talent. And just like with any field, any job, there's pros and cons to it. But what I've found is in insurance, there's a lot more pros than cons. It's a great industry that is, for the most part, has been, recession proof. It's something that everyone needs. It's a great field, and there's a strong desire to get more young people involved. And I constantly have agents asking me, hey, do you know anyone that's looking for a job? Do you know anyone that's looking for work? So, I mean, if there's people out there that are looking for work that want to get into insurance, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I have many people I can connect you with. So I think that's the biggest thing. There is a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you 100%. I also think it's not just selling. People think of insurance and they think the only thing you could do is sell. But the reality is there's a ton of other, I don't sell insurance and I'm in this industry. I help them run their businesses and I help value them. And there's a whole M&A space here. There's a lot of, there's, technology people that are in this space. There's a lot of different ways to be involved. And I'd say, such opportunity for fresh thinking. I can't think of an industry other than maybe the financial industry. There's a lag behind. So there's so much opportunity to make a difference, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
You can definitely make an impact. And I recently actually referred a friend of mine who has an engineering background. She was complaining to me about her job and the difficulties that she had been finding in her industry. She wanted more opportunities for advancement. And I was like, hey, have you thought about insurance? And I was looking through our little careers portal and found a job that looked similar to what she was describing. So she's in the interview process now. Hopefully I can convert some more people over.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
I've been trying to convert so many of my friends to the insurance industry and I haven't made any of them stick yet, but I've gotten plenty of interviews through the door so far. So we'll see. I tell all of my young, our age friends that you can be in this industry. And I always have to remind them, there are still people in this industry who fax things. Like the fact that you know how to Google, use, AI, that's not seen as the norm. So people who are just slightly technology, wants to learn technology or wants to, further make things automated, those are amazing skills to have. If you're not scared of it, you're going to go absolutely far. So I'm a big proponent of people joining the industry as well. I think that there's just so much opportunity, especially with the knowledge gap, but there's things that are filling the knowledge gap for us that it's not going to make it so wide whereas before you really had to sit next to the agency owner, sit next to the church guy in order to learn the church things. It's not so much like that anymore.
Certainly. And so much has changed in recent years. I think that's one of the reasons why I've accelerated so much in my career over the last 5 years is because the industry has changed a lot. The carriers that they regularly riding with before, they aren't doing that anymore. We had to, the agency I was working at, we had to take on a number of non-admitted carriers and E&S, markets that because I was new, I was able to adapt to that change a little bit quicker than my peers who have been used to, doing the same thing for a certain amount of time. And so that's another big pro is, having that ability to change.
So Molly, you're in one of the toughest markets. There's no two ways around that. And talk to us about how you stayed positive during that. I mean, we actually recently were moderating an owner's conversation, and we surveyed them in advance, and we almost had to not ignore, but there was so much about the specific market that they were in. And honestly, not a lot you can talk about there. And then all the other topics that they wanted to talk about as owners. So tell me what that looked like inside your agency and also in the carrier that you're in. Like, what is that? How do you navigate that and stay positive and really think about it a different way?
It's a great question. So for those of you who don't know, I am in California.
Everybody knew as soon as I said you're in the toughest market. I'm sure they can figure that out, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's certainly been a challenge. And like what I was alluding to earlier with the fact that we, on the agency side had to take on some different markets and, had to start writing with carriers that we had been avoiding and not writing with because it was a hurdle. That is, a big part of what we had to do. I think how we stay positive, we focus on the opportunity. There's always going to be opportunity, especially in these difficult markets. A lot of people, may not want to write specific policies because they have to deal with agency build things and kind of manual renewals that they may have, had the privilege of avoiding for a long time. Yeah. And so I think just focusing on opportunity has been a big piece. And I think that's been the biggest thing is focusing on the opportunity and continuing to stay positive because people are still growing in this market. I think a lot of people forget that because, there's a lot of agencies that are not growing right now, but people are making it work. Focus on the opportunity, focus where you can see those wins. Don't spend too much time on the areas where you can't win. I think that's the biggest thing I saw in the agency setting. I tried to figure out as quickly as possible, will I be able to write this policy or not? And if the answer was no, I tried to tell that customer as soon as possible because I want to give them as much of a runway as possible to allow them to find different coverage if I was not going to be able to help them. I think a lot of agencies tend to, really try to help everyone they can, which is great in theory, but in some cases it can end up even hurting the customer because they don't have an opportunity to go out and shop themselves. And so on the agency side, my goal was always to leave the customer with a good impression, whether that be telling them, I honestly don't have an option for you, or helping them find coverage. So doing that as quickly as possible was a big piece. Yeah. On the carrier side, it's tricky. It is tricky because a lot of agency owners that I'm speaking with are struggling right now. They're having a hard time adapting their businesses. They, have been focused. Maybe they're concentrated with a particular carrier, with a particular risk, and maybe that's not where the business is right now. Maybe that's not an area of opportunity. And so they really have to adapt. And some agencies are in positions to do that better than others. Agencies that are, fully paper, that aren't using a management system, it's much more difficult for them to adapt and, start using these kind of unique carriers that have come to market when the standard admitted carriers don't have options for them. So it's tricky. I think one thing that also is really interesting, I just thought I would point it out on story time. I accepted my job just ahead of the fires in California, in Los Angeles. Wow. And my company's based in Southern California. It's, it was a big thing for my company, for our industry, for the state. And I remember feeling a lot of uncertainty at that time when I was keeping an eye on the fires, knowing that I'm planning to leave this job. And I think it happened during my week off between those two jobs.
Oh my goodness.
And I wasn't sure at first, what does this mean for my job? Is the role still available? Mm-hmm. Will the nature of my duties shift given this big event? And so I remember I reached out to my manager just saying, hey, I'm thinking of your team today. I know this must be a lot. When I get started, if there's anything I can do, if I can take, first notice of loss calls, I'm happy to do that. If I can go be boots on the ground to help with these claim centers, anything that I can do to help, I'm here to do that. But when big events like that happen with a carrier, all boots are on the ground. I mean, the whole team mobilized and got in there quickly to help out. And I'm grateful that we're still here, we're still open. And it's not been easy, but I'm proud to, be a part of an organization that really hit the ground running when an event like that happened and continue to stay open for our agents in California.
Yeah, man, that's what a first week at a new role.
Wow, that puts a whole new definition on also bringing people together. I mean, I think that's true for our country, and it's true for when there's a crisis of some sort. I find it brings out lots of things in people, but mostly the humanity and, talk about building a team that can get around something that we all care so much about is the people who are suffering like that. I will tell you, Molly, I can't even imagine, the impact of that. It's funny, like news cycles change, but when you live it, it doesn't change because you drive by it every day. You see that it's different. And I think that's true anywhere. There's a hurricane in Florida, the news cycle changes a month later and nobody remembers. But for us, that hurricane that came up and went through Asheville, and then you go to a city that does not look the same and will not look the same for many, many for a long period of time. There's just no two ways around that. I know that that's troubling for all kinds of people, but I'm glad you had your job, and I'm glad that you were able to pitch in the way that it is, because it's not unheard of to think that would change that, right? Absolutely. Crazy. Crazy.
So, Molly, I was recently having a discussion with a couple agency owners who were getting ready to hire their children into their agency. And we were talking about, one of them was like, yeah, I'm going to send them to work at a carrier for the summer and then they're going to join. And the other was like, I don't exactly know what I'm going to do. Like, maybe they'll just join the agency. I don't really know. And with my experience in the industry, working for a state association and then a network, I really got to see a lot, especially with my role at the network. Like when you say that there are agencies out there struggling to adapt, and then there are agencies out there who are struggling to grow, or who aren't struggling to grow, and they're rapidly growing in the hard market. That's really true. And one of the things that I had told them was, you always hear the saying, if you go to work at one agency, you've worked at one agency, right? They all do it differently. And I almost had the same experience when I worked at a network with carriers. You work at one carrier and you've worked at one carrier, right? They all operate very, very differently. And they all have different goals. They have different agencies that they cater to. So working at that network gave me such perspective, not only working with a bunch of different agencies and how they interact with a bunch of different carriers, but what's important to different carriers and what's important to different agencies really came to light. So I could only imagine you coming home to like family dinner on Sunday or something, that your dad and your uncle are like, what are you learning from all these different agencies that are, all doing different things? You must be like a fountain of knowledge to them at this point, hopefully, to, give them some, hey, I saw this agency doing this and it's, going really well, or I saw this agency doing this. Do not do this. Are there those types of conversations happening?
A little bit. I try to keep, a little part of the goal of going to the carrier side was to kind of have some separation of family life and work life. Yeah. So as much as possible, I try to keep that separate. And I don't work with them. Like, they're not one of the agencies that I work with on the carrier side.
Gotcha.
And, you know, I want my agencies to really do the best.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll be giving out how many free tips I'll be giving out. But I do think, like, because I was on the agency side, coming to the carrier side, there were a few things like right away that came up when I was like shadowing some other people's calls, and that just come up that have been around from our carrier specifically for a long time that I just genuinely did not know about.
Interesting.
So like our carrier has some cool tools for helping agents, you know, quote with us. And I did not know about it on the agency side, and it was really illuminating. So I remember I shared that with them, and it was a good reminder. I think agencies forget that their carrier partners like are here to help them. Like we want our agencies to be successful. Like we love independent agents. If you're successful, we're successful. And if you're able to build that strong relationship and you're willing to, you know, be open with your carrier partners, they often have tools to help you succeed, but we don't necessarily know what you need without you giving us insight into your business. Yeah. And so it is interesting, you know, being on this side of things, you come across different agencies who may be more or less open to, you know, meeting with their carrier partners and talking about their business. And in many cases, like, we know a lot about our carrier. And so we may be able to clue you in on things that allow you to see more success with us too.
Yeah. Super interesting. Well, I would love to close this out. And I know you've given like a couple, you know, here's advice I would give, or here's, you know, what I would give. But I think one of the important things, at least for our relationship, that we have discussed a lot is, you know, holding respect and having a lot of love put into your family business. So if there is someone who's working at a family business that might want to do similar to what you do and left, I am not one of those people, Mom. That's not why I'm asking this question. But what advice would you give someone who is, you know, maybe looking at a really stressful change, or is, you know, nervous going into that, to, you know, any lessons learned from yours that you could pass along?
Yeah, I think just is, if you have that good relationship with your family, be honest with them about how you're feeling and trust that they want the best for you.
Yeah.
I think, like, I know that's what my dad and uncle wanted for me. They were so excited for me to, you know, seek out these opportunities, but I was really nervous to tell them when I first started thinking about these carrier opportunities. I remember for several years before I started looking at the jobs, when I first started meeting with our reps, I remember thinking in the back of my head, oh, that would be cool. I think I would enjoy working with many different agencies. And that always kind of stuck in the back of my mind. And then as I continued working in the agency and saw my dad get ready to retire, I realized, okay, there may be a path here where this is my only job. This is the only place I work. Would I be happy with that? And I kind of came to the conclusion that no, I wouldn't be. I want to explore what life would be like, you know, at a larger organization. And so I think, be honest with your family if you want to explore other opportunities, particularly if you have that great relationship. And the insurance industry is large. There's so many opportunities. You know, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and explore, because you may be really happy at another place. And at least in my situation, there were no hard feelings. We still enjoy our holidays and our family dinners together. And I'm grateful for that. So I think that's the biggest piece, is don't let your fears rule your life. You can do anything.
Yeah. Super great advice. Very good advice.
Well, thank you so much, Molly, for coming on. It was so fun to have a fellow young person in the industry on to chat about some of those things. But I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. It was so nice talking to you both, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.